Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The laughter began before the human even boarded. It vibrated through the hull of the Carvax dreadnought Dominion's Wrath, echoing across armored corridors and into the high command amphitheater where conquest was usually celebrated, not negotiated. High Dominus Threx stood at the center dais, his towering frame draped in ceremonial war plating etched with the sigils of 9 conquered systems. The air inside the chamber was dense, tuned to Carvax gravity standards, 1.9 times the galactic norm. The atmosphere was thick with metallic humidity and heat, optimized for his species' physiology. To most beings in the galaxy, stepping inside would feel like drowning under invisible stone. To a human, it should have been lethal. She approaches, announced tactical warlord Krex. A holographic projection flared to life in the center of the chamber. The Terran shuttle drifted toward the docking spine, small and angular. Nothing like the heavy, armored warcraft the Carvax respected. No escort vessels, Krex added. No defense grid signatures, said another. No weapons charge. The chamber rumbled with amusement. High Dominus Threx rotated one of his primary ocular lenses toward the projection. They surrender properly, at least. A junior warlord shifted uneasily. Our scans confirm only one life form aboard. The laughter intensified. One. Krex barked. They send a single soft skin? Perhaps the rest are too fragile to withstand the docking, another suggested. Threx raised a clawed hand, and the chamber quieted. Let them witness the consequence of defiance, he said, and the mercy of submission. The airlock. Commander Ilera Ven felt the shuttle clamp onto the dreadnought. There was no tremor in her hands. She stood in the narrow cabin, helmet removed, dark hair pulled back tight. The Terran insignia on her uniform was subtle, no medals, no ornamentation. Across from her, the shuttle pilot swallowed hard. Commander, he said, voice tight, Fleet Command confirms we're alone within 3 light minutes. I know. They could kill you the moment the hatch opens. Ilera flexed her fingers once. The bones felt steady. The gravity shift had already begun to bleed through the docking seal, heavier than Earth standard. Her heart rate remained level. That's why they won't, she replied. The outer hatch disengaged with a deep metallic thud. Cycle complete, the ship AI announced. Ilera stepped forward. The first step. The moment the inner airlock door slid open, gravity slammed down like a physical blow. To the observing Carvax, this was the moment they anticipated most, the first buckle of knees, the tremor of weakness, the gasp for air. Ilera felt the pressure compress her spine, felt the increased resistance in every muscle, felt the weight trying to drag her forward, and adjusted. Her body compensated automatically. Years of adaptation, training, and quiet biological refinement recalibrated within seconds. Her breathing shifted deeper, slower. She took one step onto the dreadnought deck. The sound of her boots striking metal echoed louder than it should have. Another step. No stumble. No visible strain. Behind the observation barrier, murmurs replaced open laughter. She does not collapse, Krex observed. Threx narrowed his primary lens. Increase gravity by 0.2, he ordered calmly. The chamber pressure intensified. The deck groaned faintly. Ilera felt it. Of course she did. But her stride did not change. The amphitheater. She entered the command chamber alone. The space was vast, tiered platforms rising in a half-circle, filled with armored Carvax warlords. Their exoskeletal plating gleamed beneath harsh, overhead lighting. Massive banners bearing conquest sigils hung from the walls like trophies. And at the center, towering above them all, stood High Dominus Threx. He descended the steps slowly, each footfall heavy enough to vibrate through the chamber. You stand, he said, voice amplified through the translation grid, before the empire that shattered your fleets. Ilera stopped 10 meters from him. She had to tilt her head upward to meet his gaze. I know who you are, she replied evenly. You are smaller than expected. You're louder than necessary. A ripple of low growls moved through the tiers. Threx's mandibles flexed, not quite anger. Not yet. You are aware of your species' position? Yes. Your orbital defenses are ash. Yes. Your colonies burn. A flicker passed through her eyes. Controlled. Contained. Yes. Then you understand why you are here. I'm here, she said, to prevent you from making your worst mistake. The chamber went still. Then laughter again. Louder this time. Threx leaned closer. You presume we have not already made it? Alera's voice remained calm. You attacked what you thought we were. And what are you? She held his gaze. Not fragile. The demonstration. Threx turned and gestured toward the far wall. Massive blast shutters retracted with a grinding roar, revealing the arena chamber beyond. The floor was scarred and reinforced, clearly designed to contain something violent. Heavy containment fields flickered to life. Then the war beast emerged. It moved on 4 colossal limbs, its armored hide layered in overlapping bioplates. Serrated ridges pulsed faintly along its spine. Steam vented from slits along its neck as it exhaled. Several Carvax warlords straightened with pride. This, Threx declared, is what ended your Third Fleet's ground forces. The beast lowered its head and growled, the sound reverberating like distant artillery. It is engineered for annihilation. It does not tire. It does not retreat. Alera studied it. Not with fear. With assessment. You deployed that on civilians, she said quietly. They resisted. They were evacuating. They existed within our claim. The beast's claws scraped against the deck as it shifted its weight. Threx turned back to her. Your surrender will prevent this creature from being released upon your final refuge world. And if I refuse? The war beast roared, slamming its forelimbs into the reinforced floor. The impact sent a shockwave through the chamber. Then it hunts, Threx replied. Silence stretched between them. Alera stepped forward, toward the arena barrier. Let it out. The chamber froze. Threx's translator clicked once, recalibrating. You request demonstration? I request removal of the barrier. Laughter erupted again, disbelieving, mocking. She wishes to see it closer. Krex bellowed. Threx studied her carefully now. You misunderstand, human. Without the containment field, it will kill you instantly. Maybe, she said. The gravity hum deepened in the chamber. Threx considered the spectacle. A single human tore apart before the War Council would be a fitting symbol. He lifted his claw. Deactivate the barrier. Energy shields flickered and died. The war beast lifted its head. Its eyes locked onto Alera Ven. And for the first time since boarding the dreadnought, she smiled. Just slightly. The laughter echoed around her as the beast began to move. They still thought she was the joke. They had no idea the punchline was coming. The war beast did not hesitate. The instant the containment field vanished, it lunged. Its acceleration was explosive. 2 tons of engineered muscle propelling forward with terrifying speed. The deck plates dented under each impact of its claws. Heat flared along the ridges of its spine as bioreactive glands flooded its system with combat stimulants. To the Carvax War Council, this was already over. They had seen the beast shred armored battalions. They had watched it tear through mechanized divisions designed for siege warfare. Human infantry had broken beneath it like brittle sticks. A single unarmored woman stood in its path. It would be quick. The charge. Alera did not move at first. She watched the beast skate. The left forelimb carried slightly more mass. A microlag in the rear joint, compensation from an old structural reinforcement. The spine plating flared brightest at the thoracic convergence point. Engineered perfection. With flaws. The beast roared and leapt, jaws wide enough to swallow her torso whole. Gasps of anticipation rippled through the chamber. At the final fraction of a second, Alera stepped. Not backward. Not away. Sideways. Her movement was minimal, efficient. The beast's claws sliced through empty air where she had been. Its momentum carried it past her by less than a meter. The warlord's laughter faltered. The beast twisted mid-stride, tail lashing in a violent arc aimed at her ribs. Alara raised her forearm. The impact cracked like thunder. Shockwaves rippled through the deck. Several lower-ranked carvacs instinctively flinched. When the beast's tail recoiled, Alara was still standing exactly where she had planted herself. A thin fracture line ran across the metal beneath her boots. Not from her. From the force she had absorbed. First contact. The beast pivoted and raged now. It swiped with its primary forelimb, talons capable of shearing through armored vehicles. Alara stepped forward into the strike. She caught the limb mid-swing. The chamber fell silent. Her hand wrapped around a section of chitin thicker than her torso. The beast's claw continued pushing, expecting flesh to yield. It did not. Muscle fibers in her arm contracted, layered synthetic protein chains engaging like braided steel cables. Her shoulder locked. Her spine aligned. Force transferred downward through her core into the deck. The plating beneath her boots buckled. But she did not move. The beast snarled and attempted to retract its limb. It couldn't. For the first time in its engineered life, resistance exceeded expectation. Behind the arena threshold, High Dominus Threx leaned forward. "Impossible," muttered Krex. The beast twisted violently, trying to tear free. Its secondary limbs dug into the deck for leverage, claws gouging metal trenches. Alara exhaled once, slowly. Then she squeezed. A sharp cracking sound split the chamber. The beast shrieked as microfractures spiderwebbed across its forelimb plating. The Carvax warlord stiffened. Escalation. Pain triggered the beast's kill protocol. Its spinal ridges flared white-hot as chemical accelerants flooded its bloodstream. Its muscles swelled, expanding beneath armored plates. It lunged forward again, attempting to crush Alara beneath its full mass. 2 tons came down on her. She dropped her stance. Caught it. The sound was indescribable, metal screaming, air compressing, the dull thunder of weight meeting resistance. The beast's forelimbs pressed against her shoulders as its hind legs scrambled for traction. Alara's boots sank half an inch into the reinforced deck. Her breathing remained steady. Gravity weighed on her, nearly double Earth standard. She had trained it higher. The beast's jaws snapped inches from her face. Hot vapor washed across her skin. She met its eyes. "You were built wrong," she said quietly. With a surge of controlled force, she shifted her grip. One hand slid from the damaged forelimb to the underside of its thoracic plating, the structural hinge point where upper mass met spinal column. Her fingers dug in. The armor resisted, then dented, then cracked. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. The beast reared instinctively, trying to disengage. Alara moved with it. She pivoted her hips, redirecting its upward momentum sideways. The creature's rear limbs lost stable footing. For a fraction of a second, 2 tons of Carvax war-engineered terror were off balance. That was all she needed. The breaking point. Alara planted her left foot deeper into the warped deck plating. Her right hand locked beneath the beast's thoracic ridge. Her left hand seized the damaged forelimb for leverage. She rotated. Not wildly. Precisely. The motion transferred torque directly into the beast's spine. The first crack was sharp. The second was catastrophic. The serrated ridge along its back bent at a grotesque angle. Bioluminescent veins flickered erratically as neural pathways severed. The beast screamed, a high, piercing sound utterly unlike its earlier roars. Alara did not release. She adjusted her grip slightly higher along the ridge. Then, with one final brutal twist, the spine snapped.
Clean.
Audible across the entire chamber. The war beast's body went limp instantly. Its rear limbs collapsed. Its head struck the deck with a heavy metallic thud. Silence followed. No groans. No movement. Dead before it fully hit the ground. The aftermath. Alara remained standing over the corpse, one hand still resting lightly on the broken ridge. Her breathing had elevated slightly. That was all. The reinforced arena floor was shattered in a crater around her boots. Across the amphitheater, dozens of armored Carvacs stared down in disbelief. High Dominus Threx did not move. The war beast had been their symbol, proof that biological mass and gravitational superiority guaranteed dominance. And a fragile human had just killed it with her bare hands. Alara withdrew her hand slowly. A thin line of dark blood, not hers, ran across her knuckles. She looked up at the War Council. No anger in her expression. No triumph. Only certainty. "You increase the gravity," she said evenly. Her voice carried across the chamber, without amplification. "Is that all?" The question hung in the air, like a blade. For the first time since humanity's fleet had been destroyed, no Carvax laughed. No one moved to retrieve the body. The war beast lay twisted at the center of the arena, its once proud spinal ridge bent like shattered scaffolding. Bioluminescent veins flickered weakly beneath fractured plating before fading into dull gray. The silence inside the amphitheater was heavier than the gravity. High Dominus Threx descended the final steps of the dais. Each footfall echoed. He stopped at the edge of the fractured deck, staring at the corpse of the Empire's most celebrated weapon. "It was optimized," he said slowly. "Perfected across 6 generations of genetic refinement." Alara stood across from him, calm amid the warped metal and scattered debris. "Optimized," she repeated. "For what?" "For dominance." She tilted her head slightly. "There's the flaw." A low growl rippled through the chamber. Threx's ocular lenses narrowed. "You imply our evolution is inferior?" "No," she said evenly. "Incomplete." The scan. A command gesture from Threx activated the chamber's tactical array. Scanning beams swept across Alara, deep spectrum, multi-layered, invasive. Data cascaded across hovering hololith displays, bone density readings, muscular fiber analysis, neural conduction speeds. The numbers spiked beyond projected human norms. "Her skeletal structure," one warlord muttered. "Reinforced latticework," another replied. "At the molecular scale." Muscle density exceeding Carvax's baseline by 12%. Under this gravity. Alara didn't flinch as the scan intensified. "You studied humanity at rest," she said. "You measured our civilians, our diplomats, our baseline soldiers." Threxa's voice deepened. "You altered your genome." "Yes." The admission did not come with shame. Or pride. Just fact. The truth of Terra. Humanity had not changed for war. That had been the mistake in Carvax's analysis. Alara gestured toward the shattered deck. 2 centuries ago, she said, we nearly destroyed ourselves. Climate collapse. Resource depletion. Escalating gravitational industrial strain on orbital infrastructure. A planet pushed beyond sustainable limits. "We survived," she continued. "But survival required adaptation." The hololith shifted. Human historical archives flooded the chamber, images transmitted directly from Terran command. Cities rebuilt beneath heavier atmospheric stabilizers. Orbital habitats rotating at higher gravities to preserve bone health long-term. Children training in variable G environments as routine education. "Our bones were failing in low-gravity colonies," Alara explained. "Our bodies weakening in space." So they changed that. Gene therapies first, correcting degeneration. Then enhancement, strengthening osteolattices with carbon weave protein matrices. Muscle fibers interlaced with synthetic myomer strands for endurance. Neural optimization to reduce signal latency under strain. Gradual, ethical, universal, not a warrior caste. An entire species made resilient. "We didn't engineer soldiers," she said quietly. "We engineered survival." The hololith shifted again. Gravity training chambers appeared on screen. 1.2 G, 1.5 G, 2.0 G. Human civilians walking, running, working beneath crushing force fields. Children laughing as they learned to move, where once they would have collapsed. "You evolved under higher gravity," Alara continued. "So did we." The difference settled in slowly across the Carvax ranks. They had been born strong. Humanity had chosen to become stronger. The demonstration beyond one. Threxa's voice lowered. "You are exceptional." "No." Alara tapped a control on her wrist. The chamber filled with new projections, live feeds from Terran installations. Hundreds of humans stood inside gravity wells exceeding the dreadnought's environment. Engineers repairing fusion cores under 2.3 G. Rescue workers lifting collapsed debris as if it were light cargo. Soldiers sparring calmly in conditions that would cripple most species. None wore powered armor. None appeared strained. A young woman in a training arena executed a controlled lift, 3 tons of weighted mass, under enhanced gravity. A gray-haired civilian calmly walked through 2.1 G as though strolling through a park. "We adapted universally," Alara said. "Not selectively." Murmurs shifted tone. This was no longer disbelief. It was recalculation. "You hid this," Crux growled. "We didn't advertise it." "Why?" Alara's gaze swept the chamber. "Because strength isn't a threat unless you use it that way." Cracks and certainty. Threx stepped closer to the war beast's corpse. He knelt, an action that caused subtle tension across the tiers, and placed a clawed hand against its broken spine. "Our empire has subjugated 31 systems," he said quietly. "None resisted effectively." "You chose worlds that couldn't," Alara replied. His gaze snapped up. "You imply we feared challenge? I imply you never faced one." The words hung sharp in the heavy air. Threx rose slowly to his full height. "You destroyed our ground forces on Velker," he said. "No," Alara corrected. "You destroyed what we sent to evacuate civilians." A pause. "You misinterpreted restraint as weakness." The statement struck harder than the physical demonstration. The Carvax prided themselves on overwhelming force. Humanity had shown restraint in defeat. That, to the Carvax mindset, had looked like fragility. The strategic shift. Tactical data streamed across the chamber's displays as Carvax analysts recalculated probabilities in real time. Projected invasion success rates against updated human physical parameters dropped precipitously. Urban combat projections shifted from 82% Carvax dominance to 47%, then lower as environmental variables factored in. Human infrastructure adapted for high gravity would become natural fortresses. Close-quarters engagement would heavily favor Terran physiology. Attrition models projected catastrophic Carvax losses. For the first time since the Empire's expansion began, the math did not guarantee victory. Threx absorbed the data in silence. "You claim peace," he said finally. "Yes. But you prepared for war." Alara's expression hardened just slightly. "We prepared for survival." The final realization. Threx looked at her differently now. Not as a curiosity. Not as prey. As a variable he had failed to account for. "You snapped the spine of our greatest weapon," he said. "Yes. And you are not your strongest." "No." A quiet tremor passed through the chamber. The Carvax understood hierarchy instinctively. If this individual was not apex among her species, then escalation would not end in spectacle. It would end in blood. Massive quantities of it. Threx exhaled slowly through his vented mandibles. "You endured our gravity," he said. "You endured our assault." Alara met his gaze. "We've endured worse." Silence again. But this silence was no longer disbelief. It was the sound of certainty fracturing. And in that fracture, something unfamiliar to the Carvax Empire began to form. Doubt. The silence did not break. It settled. Heavy. Immovable. More oppressive than the gravity field humming through the Carvax dreadnought. High Dominus Threx stood at the center of his war chamber, surrounded by banners that commemorated extinction events. Entire civilizations reduced to sigils etched in alloy and bone. For the first time since ascending to Dominion, he did not know which banner would be added next. Or if one would. The war beast lay between him and the human. Broken. Not defeated in battle. Ended. Alara then stood with hands relaxed at her sides. No visible strain. No aggression. No triumph. That unsettled them more than the display of strength. She had nothing to prove. The calculations. Across the chamber walls, tactical projections continued updating in silent streams of data. Carvax fleet superiority, still overwhelming in open vacuum engagement. Orbital bombardment viability. Effective. Ground occupation projections. Declining. Rapidly. Human high-gravity adaptation altered every close-quarters engagement model. Urban pacification timelines stretched from weeks to years. Casualty projections rose beyond acceptable thresholds for sustained imperial expansion. Worse, newly uploaded Terran data revealed something more troubling. Human war doctrine emphasized decentralized resistance. Infrastructure designed to function under siege. Civilian populations physically capable of sustained insurgency. Conquest would not be swift. It would be expensive. Threx did not fear battle. He feared stagnation. Empires that bled too long became vulnerable. The question of pride. You could have brought an army, Threx said at last. Alara nodded slightly. Yes. You could have retaliated after Velker. Yes. You did not.
No.
Why? Her answer came without hesitation. Because escalation is easy. The chamber lights reflected faintly in her eyes as she continued. You believe dominance proves strength. We learned the opposite. A flicker of archived human history flashed across the hololith. Brief glimpses of internal wars, mushrooming firestorms, collapsing cities, oceans rising. We were very good at destroying ourselves, she said quietly. We decided to stop being impressed by it. The words landed harder than accusation. They carried experience. A shift in posture. Threx stepped forward until only the corpse of the war beast separated them. You ask us to withdraw, he said. Yes. You offer what in return? Non-aggression.
Trade.
Knowledge exchange. A low murmur rippled across the war council tiers. Carve's culture did not trade with equals. It absorbed subordinates. Threx studied her carefully. You demonstrate power, he said. Then speak of peace. Alara met his gaze evenly. Peace without strength is a request.
A beat.
Peace with strength is a choice. The distinction was clear. Humanity was not pleading. They were offering. The breaking of laughter. Threx turned slowly, addressing his warlords. You laughed, he said. None answered. You measured bone length, muscle mass, atmospheric tolerance. His gaze swept across them. You mistook difference for weakness. No one disputed it. The war beast at his feet was argument enough. He faced Alara again. If we continue this campaign, he said carefully, your people will resist. Yes. You'll fight. If necessary. And you believe you will win? Alara considered the question. Then, I believe we will still exist. The simplicity of the statement carried absolute conviction. Victory, to humanity, was survival. The Carvax had never defined it that way. Powering down, the moment stretched. Every warlord waited for Threx's decision. Attack, and preserve imperial pride. Or withdraw, and preserve imperial strength. Finally, he lifted his claw and issued a sharp command in his native tongue. Across the dreadnought, systems shifted. Weapons arrays powered down from active assault mode. Targeting locks disengaged. Fleet formations outside the hull reoriented from invasion vectors to defensive holding patterns. The low hum of imminent war faded. A different silence filled its place. Not defeat. Restraint. The recognition. Threx descended the final step and stopped within arm's reach of Alara. Up close, the scale difference was stark. He could have crushed her skull with one hand, by appearance alone. But appearance had proven unreliable. You are dangerous, he said. Yes. But you did not come here to threaten.
No.
Why send only you? Alara allowed the faintest hint of a smile. Because if I failed, she said, we would have sent someone stronger. The implication hung unspoken but understood. Threx inclined his head, not a bow, but the closest equivalent his species offered to acknowledgement between equals. You have altered our calculations, Commander Ven. That was the goal. The departure. As she turned toward the docking corridor, Carvax's warlords parted without being ordered. No laughter followed her this time. No mocking commentary. Only measured silence. At the threshold, Alara paused and looked back once. High Dominus. He met her gaze. Next time you measure humanity, she said, don't stop at the surface. The airlock sealed behind her. Aftermath. Minutes later, Terran sensors confirmed what their analysts scarcely believed. The Carvax fleet withdrew from assault range.
Not fleeing.
Not routed. Repositioning beyond engagement distance. A message followed, short, formal, and unprecedented. Imperial campaign suspended. Diplomatic channels open. On the bridge of her shuttle, gravity returning gradually to Earth's standard, Alara finally allowed herself a slow breath. The pilot stared at her with wide eyes. You killed their war monster, he whispered. Alara flexed her fingers once, feeling residual tension ease from muscle and bone. No, she said quietly. I killed an assumption. Outside the viewport, the massive Carvax dreadnought diminished against the stars. Behind its armored hull, an empire reconsidered its definition of strength. And across human space, a single truth spread faster than any fleet. They had laughed at the fragile human. They would not laugh again.